So thank you all for joining us on this very sunny Thursday morning. I am Katie Robson. I'm director from Elevate, and if you don't know us, we're a business development consultancy, which I still sort of wonder what that means. Essentially, we do events, networking and business development in and around Greater Manchester, and then we have been working a little bit further afield of late, up in Cumbria, Leeds, Liverpool. So yeah, we're trying to champion business in the north, and our areas that we're passionate around are innovation, sustainability and community. So we do a series of events every month, and every month we do a sustainability webinar, and today the focus is hospitality, which is ideal for me because my background is hospitality. So it's a sector I know pretty well. A lot of things have changed, and sustainability certainly wasn't a factor of the operations really when I was working there. So we've got a couple of great guests today to share sort of what they're up to, kind of inspire, and yeah, we think it's really important for people to share their journey. It's not that we're all in this perfect place, but we're on that kind of path to be more sustainable. So I shall let Charlotte first of all introduce herself.
Hi everyone. So I'm Charlotte Hayes. I'm one of the owners of Common&Co. So we're a Manchester-based hospitality company. Been running for 18 years now, starting with Common Bar. We've got Port Street Beer House in town, the Beagle in Chorlton, and newly opened Nell's at campus. So the Nell's Pizza is the focus of our business at the moment from the food side, which we've now got at all three sites that do food. So Beagle, Common and Nell's at campus. Yeah, so I've been working in hospitality for quite a long time and really keen. We've been doing quite a lot of work over the last 12 months around sustainability. Kind of still feel we're at the start of the journey, but we have been kind of making some steps and looking at what we can do next.
Brilliant. And we'll come to you, Michaela.
Great, thanks. So yeah, I'm Michaela Keanan. I work at the Sustainable Materials Innovation Hub, where I work as a business engagement coordinator. And so if you're not familiar, we're a local innovation programme which helps businesses across Greater Manchester to create sustainable solutions for plastics use and waste management. So yeah, I've only been in the role for just up to about 3 months. So my background has been working on a range of innovation programmes supporting startups and SMEs within the Northwest.
Perfect. So I'm going to start with you, Charlotte. So as you mentioned, kind of passionate about sustainability. Tell us about kind of 18 years in the sector, and where you're up to now, and what's kind of inspired you to go down a bit more sort of sustainable path.
Yeah, I think the shift for me, well, obviously we've been aware of it for a little while now. I think the shift kind of came, in fact, the kind of catalyst of this was doing the carbon literacy course. I think we've been aware of this for quite a long time and haven't really known how to kind of get into it. Previously, pre-COVID, our business model was quite kind of burgers and brunch focused. That was the food side. I think when we were kind of starting to think about how we made improvements around that. So we actually had this kind of concept of Nell's developed and ready to go, and the kind of one of the main drivers behind that was that it was going to allow us to run a kind of more gentle business. So we've kind of been moving towards it for quite a while, and kind of seeing quite long term how we could start to move the business in a more kind of sustainable way. Then during lockdown, John and I both did the carbon literacy course, which was great. And I think up until that point, I was a bit kind of head in the sand with it. It's one of those things where it's quite uncomfortable reading or viewing to kind of really delve into. And when we did it, I think the thing that I really liked was that there was hope, and that there was lots you could do, and that we did that course and came away with it like, right, okay, there is actually a lot of changes that we can make and begin to make, and kind of see. So I think that was kind of why it's kind of started personally, I suppose, and then we've kind of moved that into the business as we could.
And so some of the things that you've then kind of changed into the business, kind of what are some of those changes, and what they look and felt like, and told us about.
So I think One of the big ones is around this shift into Nell's Pizza. So we've been able to, we got rid of all fryers and all gas at all sites. So now the cooking is all 100% electric ovens, kind of really efficient ovens. We don't use any beef anymore. So previously we were kind of like burgers and brunch. So it was avocados, it was loads of burgers. And now we don't have any beef at all. We have a bit of meat on the menu. Our menus, I think it's 75% veggie, 35% vegan. And they're big sellers now, the kind of veggie and vegan ones. The meat we do have, we're quite careful about where it comes from. We kind of use local butchers who are very much their kind of whole animal butchery. And then the high welfare meat is the other one. The pepperoni kind of comes from a artisan little charcuterie in London. And then the other side of it is around the energy use, so switching to 100% renewable. We've introduced at each site, we're kind of trying to look at the little steps as well. So little things like light bulbs, like kind of energy use, and we've got sustainability champions now at each site, which we're just kind of putting in place, rolling that out at the minute, just to look at where else we can make changes. And I suppose the other side of it is just kind of paying attention to waste, to recycling, to what products we're using for our takeaway packaging. It's kind of having a bit of an eye on every aspect and trying to make the better choice. So those are the steps we've made. The big ones are kind of around this shift into Nell's Pizza and away from that menu, because that in itself allowed us to just run a far cleaner business, a far cleaner model. And now we're kind of looking at all the little add-on bits and how we can make improvements across the board.
And is it, like, I think we mentioned at some point, you've changed how you work your deliveries and things as well?
What do you mean? Sorry,
so when you're doing your order, it's like, do you do a bigger order because you've got more storage?
Oh, do you mean when we're buying from suppliers?
Yeah.
Yes, we have a storage unit, so we try to kind of like centralise as much as we can now, because it kind of allows us to buy once and then we'll have it stored. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I love that. And what, and I don't know, we know that the sector's just had such a battering, in a sector that was already challenging to really kind of turn a profit with so many kind of spinning plates, if you like, to kind of then COVID, and then this kind of, we all know that we miss the sector and we return, and then we're suddenly like, oh hey, like pile loads of money into making these from gas to electric. If you've been able to make that work, but what do you feel like the barriers? What's been really hard? What have you found really challenging around that?
I've been thinking about this, and I think there's 3 main barriers. I think one is obviously cost, like sustainability. In quite a lot of ways, in quite a lot of situations, it's the more expensive option. When it comes to your takeaway packaging, to get compostable versus non, it's always more expensive. And at the moment, I kind of feel as well, there's beginning to be more and more options available to help people on this, but again, it all kind of comes at a cost. So that's probably the first one. I think the next one is what you kind of said, is that headspace thing around business. Coming out of COVID and hospitality, it's tough. It's been a really tough time. People have got debt. People are, especially the size of business that we run, it's like Johnny and I are very much in the business with our hands. We've always have been, but it's not like we're kind of just sat there kind of tinkering away, looking at nice things we can do to make small improvements. It's kind of, we're busy, and it's the kind of headspace to step back and just have the actual time to a lot of this stuff as well. It's big. It's the more you look into it, the more you read, it just unravels, and there's more to understand, and a 60-page document to read here, and it's quite a commitment in some ways to open that box and then carry on with it, and which kind of leads into the next one, which is around overwhelm. I think it's so complex, and just looking, I've been looking into this for a couple of years now in hospitality, and I still feel like I'm very much at the beginning of the journey and just starting to understand it and to understand the complexities of it. And it's not even just as much as looking at our site. You have to look at suppliers, you have to look at the kind of, how do people get into work, and then there's the onward things, what happens to our products when they leave the door, what happens through our delivery, and our waste and our recycling, and I just almost feel like well, there's certain things as well, even like on a personal level, recycling, making sure your recycling's right and understanding that it's hard, isn't it? It's kind of, it's knowing, you know, in a business, we have, at the moment, we've got, for example, somebody asked me the other day, when we were like looking at these sustainability champions, and I was working with somebody, and they asked me which was better, like blue roll or tea towels. Like tea towels obviously get picked up, driven away, washed really high temperature, driven back, or blue roll, which from Googling, most stuff that I've read says blue roll isn't recyclable. I think you can probably pay more and get compostable blue roll, but in the main it's not. So it's a bit like, well, which of those is better, and how do I find out? How do I provide that answer? So I almost feel like it's the overwhelm side, and just the amount of times that I've hit a point where I'm like, I actually don't know which is the better of those things to do. I think that's a big challenge to overcome.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like I say, when my experience of working in hospitality was so, you know, and it is such a specific sector, like you can't kind of like, you know, what happens in hospitality happens in an office, because it just doesn't. It's, you know, very much kind of its own little kind of sphere, if you like. And, you know, just generally, I don't know, from some of the stuff we've done maybe with Electricity North West, I think they've got some research that actually sustainability, hospitality is one of those sectors that actually they're kind of lagging behind a bit, and whether it is kind of that headspace stuff. But I wondered whether there's kind of, you know, those attitudes generally through the sector. Is it just, you know, is it all those barriers, or actually is it that, you know, it's not something that's kind of on the radar, or there's not kind of maybe the same pressures from staff or customers to go, actually, I want to know where I'm eating and, you know, what's kind of happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think it would be good. I mean, ultimately, you almost need to see the drive from consumers, don't you? Because you're investing in something which doesn't necessarily bring you any money or save you any money. So it kind of has to be that people notice it, I suppose, which whether or not they do, I don't know. I think potentially people are beginning to more. And I actually think for us personally, one of the drivers around this, I mean, essentially it's a values exercise, isn't it? Currently that's why you do it, because it doesn't necessarily make you much money. But I think it's really important to our staff, and in a recruitment crisis, in a time when it's, you know, it's hard to attract and keep staff, I think all really counts. If you can be a business where you can show that you're paying attention to this and you're making improvements and doing all you can, I think that can only kind of be a positive. Yeah, and I think the barriers in hospitality have got to be around that, the fact that it's such a tough time. It has been such a tough time to be in this industry, and then to kind of come in, you know, we've come out of COVID and we're now straight into inflation and, you know, and recruitment crisis and all the rest of it. It's kind of, there hasn't been much breathing space, and I'm pretty sure that lots of people will feel the same as I do, and that it's a struggle to find the time and the headspace to actually dedicate to this. So yeah, I kind of feel like it's got to be a good thing, and it's got to become easier in some ways. And I don't know what the kind of future holds in terms of, it almost needs to get to a point where there's a disincentive to not be paying attention to this in order to, and just to make it easier, I suppose, for the industry, because it's so complex. I have found a few things recently which are starting to break it down and make it a bit easier to understand. But that's quite new. I think this is all, it's, you know, it's obviously moving. It's still quite a new thing, isn't it, for businesses to be having to pay as much attention to this as we need to. And it is evolving quickly, and there's more and more resources available. So
yeah, and I think, and in a sense, that doesn't only apply to hospitality, it seems, because there's no, you know, one uniform way of how we monitor and measure. It's open to interpretation, and equally kind of a bit kind of murky at what exactly those choices are. So that's really interesting about some of like the blue roll and tea towel thing. I feel like who do we know to find that information out? That's it. Like, I'm gonna go like shout out. Can we get a clear answer on that? So this feels like a good time to bring you in, Michaela. So if you just kind of explain in a bit more detail about the sustainable materials. I thought, remind me of the name again. You say it, go on.
Sustainable Materials Innovation Hub. So yeah, SMI Hub.
Sorry.
No worries at all. Even I get muddled. So yeah, just for a bit of context, so the SMI Hub started up in 2020, and we've been funded through the European Regional Development Fund. So our support is free support to businesses within Greater Manchester, and we offer 3 overlapping services, from free advice to longer term collaborations with businesses. So in particular, we have our advice stream where we provide free environmentally sustainable advice for businesses, all the way to assess and innovate, where we can do, and we have a lab on within our on site where we can do performance and materials testing. So yeah, we've got our materials experts on hand to do this, and you know, just to help businesses, you know, provide that more informed and sustainable choices. And you know, since the hub has started, we've had a group of number of requests from the hospitality industry, in particular cafes, looking at, you know, requests on, you know, support to alternatives to single-use takeaway packaging, and in particular disposable cups. And I think it's something like the figure of like 2.2 billion gets disposed of in the UK each year, and you know, this is a lot of waste, you know, that could be avoided, and so from on the back of that, then we've organised a project called Good Cup Bad Cup, and we are doing a 2-hour workshop specifically for cafes and, you know, hospitality businesses who are, you know, are looking at sustainability, and you know, do want to make a change. And as Charlotte has described, you know, there's so much information out there, and the purpose of the workshop is really just to, you know, have a, you know, be able to give businesses to be able to make a economic and sustainable informed choice. Because yeah, as you can see, you know, at the moment, you know, these businesses, and there's so much you know, spinning plates on the different issues, from recruitment to supply chain, energy costs. So yeah, you know, from what we've seen, you know, so far from going out to businesses, is that, you know, it's something that sort of like just quickly touch on, is that, you know, people are aware, and it's just like, as you say, Charlotte, finding the headspace to think about it and have the time to implement measures.
Yeah, brilliant. And what sort of you know, have you got some kind of examples of how you've worked with people, or some of the things that kind of the changes that they've kind of been able to implement that have had a big impact?
So I think in particular we have worked with excuse me, particularly like Manchester, like different types of coffee roasters, and looking at, you know, the materials flow throughout the business, but particularly, you know, from, you know, excuse me, the workshop's not until the end of July, but just going out at the moment and, you know, popping in to gain interest for this project, we're really finding like a range of sort of different issues, in particular, like you know, people are making the change to compostable packaging, but unfortunately in Greater Manchester there's no industrial composting infrastructure in place, so unfortunately it does end up in land, in incineration, particularly for GM. And, you know, the cost of the likes of vegware is sort of, and then it goes back to that trade-off where, you know, is it better off, at least it's bio-based, and, you know, it's grown, it's not using oil for it to then get incinerated over, you know, oil-based plastic that then gets incinerated. So yeah, those trade-offs is what we're experiencing, and trying to, you know, help businesses make those informed choices. But yeah, we've and I think as well, there's still, you know, a mixture of where it's from, you know, going into speakers, yeah, it's something that we've thought about, but yeah, just haven't got the time yet to implement. So we've had like a real mixture of support and responses.
Yeah, and I think, and again, I suppose it's been quite interesting since we sort of set up, and again, kind of my background in hospitality and working with organisations like yourself, or, you know, things like the Growth Hub, and, you know, there's a wealth of support that is like available, but it's almost kind of cutting through to hospitality again with the headspace, but also maybe it's just not something that is on the radar as much as is in other sort of sectors. It's like, actually, where can I access some external support and get kind of some clarity, or, you know, or we, and you know, for a huge thing, you know, we're advocates of your network almost, and it's almost that sharing thing. And I think maybe hospitality, it's, I don't know, maybe a little bit more guarded. I don't know if that's fair. I think some people are sort of starting to change that, but maybe traditionally, I think people don't want to kind of give away their like family secrets almost of like, well, we're doing this, like actually. But I think it's really important that the sort of to share the journey. And I know Charlotte was kind of slightly nervous to be like, we've not got this all sewn up here. Like, we're not coming on as like, we're smug, we've sorted this. It's very much kind of going, we've made a start, we want to talk about it, and we want to hear what other people are doing and find the benefit of kind of that peer learning almost. So Michaela, so the workshop is at the end of July, and how can people kind of get involved, and is there a criteria, or what does that look and feel like?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's on Friday the 22nd of July, and yeah, as long as you're an SME, so basically you're not part of a large group or chain, we will, nature of our funding, we have a registration form that required to be completed, but myself and the team on hand for you to help you through that. And once registered, then we will, what we've started doing as well in time for the workshop is like looking at what are particular cafes, what sustainability challenges and what answers do you need questioning. So in particular, we've had one business where it was like, we've been promised that this disposable cup can be composted at home, but we're not sure, and sort of asking a little bit more about those questions. But yeah, during the workshop itself, we're going to be providing a introduction to sustainability, looking at, you know, single-use packaging materials and what happens in terms of waste streams, and, you know, models to look at, you know, reusables and like reuse, because ultimately, you know, if you can reuse some, you know, packaging, you know, you're reducing the waste that goes to landfill, and sort of looking at opportunities like in terms of quick wins and long term, and you know, as you know, we suggested, you know, there's no solution to this overnight. I think, you know, it's all about businesses just to start, even if it's just baby steps, and I think you, as the future, as like it progresses, you're going to get a lot more from questions from customers in terms of, you know, what's in terms of like social responsibility. If I'm buying, you know, visiting your cafe, I want to make sure, you know, to be seen of, you know, wanting to work in the sustainability space. But yeah, during the workshop as well, we also have from the SMI Hub some of our materials experts, but also further stakeholders from other universities within Greater Manchester, and have from their perspective in terms of catering of, you know, some of their challenges and what they are trying to do in terms of sustainability. But yeah, as I say, you know, this is completely free of charge, and, you know, by the end of it, you know, businesses will be able to take away and hopefully have, you know, an informed choice in terms of economic and sustainability trade-offs, and, you know, can start to make those little steps, or, you know, if you're already on that journey, you know, to really, you know, well, what can you do next? And one of the particular things we've also like to include on that is there's been a lot of interest in using reusable cups. But unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't have the infrastructure in terms of like, yes, you may have dishwashing, but that's, you know, practicality. That's for, you know, for the, you know, cafe, or, you know, don't have the time to wash and then reuse. So and also the collecting of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about reuse models as I suggested. So but yeah, as I say, it's free of charge, and if you were interested in getting involved, just get in touch, and yeah, I'm sure I can send some details to you, Katie, to
yes.
You know,
yeah, we'll absolutely share that. We'll follow up with that, and then we'll share it through our socials and newsletter and stuff. And I just wanted to sort of mention, we love Sophie Walker at Disposal. I don't think I should connect you actually, Michaela, but Sophie's brilliant and very passionate about sort of waste management, and she certainly kind of brings it to life on a subject that you might think is quite dull, but it's always sort of stayed with me that, you know, we put things in the bin and it's taken away, but it doesn't go away. Like, it goes away from us, but it's going somewhere. And I think actually that mindset is almost as important as like what we then do. It's really thinking more carefully about the choices that we make, and that goes kind of you know, everything really, I suppose. So I suppose then we're kind of nearing the end, but I suppose I'm always mindful with the carbon literacy training, Charlotte, that, you know, we go into this like, you know, very like low, dark place, and then we go, oh no, let's bring it back. Like, what can we do? What would we like to see? You know, and like you say, we know that the sector is very specific, and what can we see, and what should we be doing? You know, what would be really helpful, you know, for you as an operator, Charlotte?
I do think you're right in that I think sharing would be really, really useful. There must be other people in similar positions to us making small changes, and to be able to kind of share those little changes that we're doing would be really useful. Educating around waste management, I totally agree, I think is massive. And understanding, you know, I know, not like we always say it in our family, because where my mum lives an hour away, their recycling is completely different to what we have here in Manchester. So they're always a bit shocked that I don't recycle yogurt pots because I can't here, whereas they do. And same applies to business. It's like you said, we buy all this vegware and things, and I don't know where that goes. Does it actually get disposed of properly? Is it actually is that the best thing to be doing? So I think educating around that would be really useful, and joining it together. I have found the Sustainable Restaurant Association is a really good resource. There's a paid for, you can do like a paid for rating through that, which we're just starting to work with them on that. But they also have free resources called Food Made Good. There's a 50-point questionnaire on Food Made Good, which you answer just 50 questions about your business. Quite easy, quite simple day-to-day questions. And it gives you like a 2-page overview of like essentially tick boxes. Yes, you're doing these are your action points. It's great as a kind of starting point. I'd really recommend that. The other thing I think we've kind of recently discovered is Net Zero Now, which is a company who they'll actually come in. I think their business model essentially is they'll come and assess you and look at all of your business and work out what your kind of carbon output is and how you can improve it. But they have free resources as well. They've got one called the Restaurant Playbook, which it's like a 20-page document or so, but it's like 10 steps. These are the 10 areas that in hospitality you can make changes. So those resources are found are really useful in terms of kind of flagging where people can go. I think it's getting easier. I think there's more resources available. Some of them are free now as well, where to signpost you and to start that journey. But yeah, ultimately, sharing stuff, talking about it more, and making it more accessible, easier for people to understand. It kind of just has to get easier, and I think it's beginning to.
Perfect. Charlotte, sorry, Michaela?
So I guess, you know, I forgot what the question was. I'm so sorry.
All right, no. So listen, we've kind of like gone into the dark place, and it's like, you know, what can we do? What does the future look like, and how can we kind of support hospitality to kind of get there?
Yeah. So I think, you know, at the minute, I think, you know, in terms of, you know, the waste infrastructure, you know, I do think there needs to be more clarity on, you know, because it is a mind, you know, it's like opening a can of worms. You know, once you get into it, it's like, you know, I think, you know, it's just to have, you know, a sort of more clear, informed, available information on that in terms of Greater Manchester. And, you know, I think there will be other changes happening. So, for example, in terms of recycling of, say, disposable coffee cups, or like liquid cups. So, for example, I think it's going to be introduced in 2025, which will affect at the moment larger businesses. They're still determined on smaller and micro, but it could still be affected, where larger stores will have to offer a recycling point, and that will be law for disposable coffee cups, and then that'll come down to the individual business then to dispose of and to the right place for the recycling. And at times it can still feel a bit of like, you know, this is put on the the consumer and businesses, where you kind of feel like at the end of the, there needs to be more support from government to be able to do this. And so yeah, I think yeah, as I say, clarity on waste infrastructure. You got the government policies coming in, but I think as well, just to have more, with more and more different packaging solutions being implemented, and more businesses involved within this space, that if there was more access to, say, industrial composting and things, so where businesses feel like at least it's not going to incineration or landfill. So yeah, it's building up the infrastructure for the future. So yeah, that's what I think, personally, going from.
Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful. And I always love a kind of a practical takeaway, recycle takeaway. What should if you were kind of starting again, Charlotte, what would be the first, like, if you could do one thing today, like go back to your hospitality business and look in this area, or switch suppliers, or do this one thing, like, what would that be?
Oh, one thing. I guess. There's just so many elements to it. If you pick one, I don't know. I guess the one thing I would probably say is start off by kind of educating yourself, by getting a bit of an understanding around where you can actually make the most difference, whether it's because it's even that's quite confusing. So we've talked to a few people, and one person said, like, well, ingredients, that's going to be a massive thing. And then somebody else told us, well, ingredients actually will make very little difference. So in some ways, you've got to almost look at every aspect and all the different points in your business which have an impact, and where you can actually make changes and understand where you can do it quickly. So I think it would be a bit of educating and a bit of kind of like a plan, almost saying, right, okay, so we've got energy use, you've got ingredients, you've got suppliers, you've got That's not one thing, is it? That's like many things. But one thing learn, try and like understand, just start understanding it, and it will quite quickly, I think, you'll quite quickly see the points where you can start.
Yeah, and it is almost kind of like a way, sort of pricking that consciousness of going, like you say, it's easy to kind of like, it's kind of lurking and it's going to come at some point, and it's just at what point that that sort of tipped over that edge to actually, no, we are going to start now, kind of real conscious, like.
Totally, and I think on a kind of positive point, there are many little things that you can do that are quite easy, that will actually count up and make a difference. So although it's quite overwhelming, I think just the little changes to begin with, and then you'll kind of understand more. And and
I think I don't know, there's all those things that you can't boil the ocean, and it is, is it better to do one thing than nothing? Like, yes, it is. So it's almost kind of, it's overwhelming in like where to start, but actually just do something, and it's certainly better than nothing. Michaela, is there anything that you would kind of sort of suggest to people to go out and look at and take action on?
I think, just to sort of echo Charlotte, I think the first thing you can do is just sort of sit down and just educate yourself, and look, I know it can be sort of sometimes mind-boggling to look through the resources, but to sort of educate yourself and see what different solutions are out there. But I think I think from our perspective, it's just look at where you can maybe reuse items, or look at how you can reduce waste within your business. I think that will make a small impact in the short term, but I think you can start building sort of like culturally, like as as a society, we are very much looking at single use and convenience and things. So if there's anything you can do on even just from a business side on reducing waste, I think that would be positive impact.
Fabulous. So I'm going to open it up. Has anybody got any questions they would like to ask Charlotte or Michaela? Feel free to pop it in the chat, or if you want to reveal yourself. Oh, Catherine.
Hiya. I I just had a bit of a question around if you've had any success in sort of measuring any of the impact that you've made. It's something that we struggle with, and I know it's quite a difficult thing to do. But just wondering, yeah, if you've had any success in kind of measuring it, or even working out kind of what impact any changes have made, that would be really interesting to me.
Are you asking me or okay?
Either. Yeah, I think probably more Charlotte. Yeah, it's probably more direct.
So far, I would say, in terms of kind of data, no, we haven't really. We're beginning to, so we're now like monitoring our actual energy use, kind of. So we are actually going to set targets for each of our sites and kind of say, right, this is where you're at now. Let's aim to reduce that. I think it's not so. I think the difference has been in some ways it's not a kind of, we haven't got any kind of quantitative results, if you know what I mean. It's been more anecdotal. It's more kind of seeing that we are, you can just see that we are like a cleaner business. Like even so far as in the kitchens, there's the amount of grease, because we don't fry anything anymore. We don't use gas fryers and things, so they feel just a bit more clean and a bit more sustainable in that sense. But yeah, in terms of data, I think I would like to do that. I would like to go through the process where we assess our carbon output, and then we set targets and say, right, overall. But it's big, it's complex. That involves looking at kind of how our staff get to work and all of our suppliers, and that's almost like a massive, which we will do at some point. I'm sure we will. But again, it's a bit like building ourselves up for that. Yeah, is that a good answer? So yeah, so not really in a kind of data way. But yeah, anecdotally, you can see the difference.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you.
But it is just a chat. I think that's, and again, that there's no uniform way that everyone's measuring. So when people are kind of putting out some quite bold statements on the Facebook, great. But what does that really mean?
That's definitely one of the challenges. When we started looking into this, we did a bit of a very basic kind of assessment of our carbon footprint, essentially, as a business. And then there was a little option. It was like, £300 you can offset and you'll be carbon neutral. And then it was a bit like, well, surely that can't be true. We've got to be, as a business. It's massive. There's all sorts of contributing factors to this. And also it's like the offsetting thing. It's that whole thing around, I looked into that on a little bit. And some of it's kind of planting trees and things, which, yeah, great, but they won't actually be absorbing any carbon for years to come. So there's lots of things like that which are just confusing, because you're kind of trying to do the right thing, and whether that's the right measure to be using, whether you're comparable to what other people are using. I think people are using different kind of systems and all sorts. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Have you got anything to add on that, Michaela?
Yeah, I think just, you can't, it's so tricky, because a lot of, you do see, businesses saying, but they're carbon neutral and things. It's like, but what is the context to this? And, I think, as I say, it's tricky. But I think, it could be something as simple as, just looking, as you say, how your employees get to work, or I think just to maybe start off small in the data collection, because as you say, Charlotte, it can get really complex. But just to add, there's no simple solution.
And I think from experience, I think starting with just yourself, just your kind of existing on-site business is the way to go, because if you start, there is more to it than that. There is the kind of upstream, downstream angle. But I'm not there yet. Having been doing this for a year or so, we're not at a point where I can understand it enough to focus on that. I think that will come. But in terms of kind of how to approach it, I would kind of say just start off with yourself. Start off with your actual on-site. Yeah. And
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Like you say, it kind of almost like taking the high road. Like, yes, you can offset, and if you can afford to do that, then that's probably a good thing to do anyway, but actually make sure that that's not at the cost of the other things that you like really need to look at and make a switch to. It's not just like, hey, I've ticked a box over here. Like, I think it's more wide than that, isn't it?
And
I think that I don't know, there's a couple of things really that are I love that your staff are kind of so into it, that's now giving you a competitive edge in hiring kind of staff. I just think, you know, yeah, but I think businesses have to wake up, because, you know, ultimately with kind of post-COVID, you know, kind of cost of living crisis, people want to feel like they're working for a business that are doing good things with, you know, their power. And I think, you know, clearly kind of working for you, which is great. And yeah, I think, you know, there's what I love about these sorts of conversations is that it means that it's not the end. And actually, you know, I know that Sophie from Disposal would love to kind of share her knowledge of kind of waste management and how to kind of some of the things, that we can facilitate that. So that's going to be on my list to kind of get some people together, probably picking your brain, Charlotte. Who else we can get there?
I'd love to talk to her.
Yeah, she's fabulous. I've never been so excited about waste management. Sophie, I promise you, she's fab. But yeah, and I think that collaboration stuff is like absolutely key, and that, you know, and that's what we love to do. So there'll definitely be some more activity in the hospitality and sustainability space. If anyone's got any final questions, no. Charlotte and Michaela's details will be available. So feel free to get in contact after if you do have anything that sort of springs to mind. We'll be following up with the recording, so feel free to share. Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you, Michaela. It's been so interesting, and yeah, we'll be wheeling you out again soon, I hope. Yeah, everybody have a lovely day, and thank you all for coming along. Cheers.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie. Charlotte.